Patterson the blast on that. Diving save. Hart as he flashes across. Briere sends up Carl side of the net. Deflected. Score! Briere moving in. Stops. Cuts to the middle. Still has a shot. Score! Here's Hughes giving it across. Oh, it's right out. Save by Maher. Short-handed mid. He scores! Cruising is Provorov. He scores! Ivan Provorov!
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Flyered Up Podcast. I'm your host, Amedeo Grassia, along with my partner, Chris, Maher, as always. And we have a guest on with us today. We have Jim from Flyers High and Wide Radio. Welcome, Jim, to the podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great, boys. Thanks for having me on once again. It's a pleasure to be here and hang out with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a pleasure having you on. And for people joining us now, we live stream always on the Painted Lines, TTP Sports, and FLYERSFANMANIA 93, along with a bunch of other Twitter channels, the Flyered Up Pod, mine, Chris's Twitter, TPL's, Facebook, everything. If you somehow don't find us, you're crazy. But yeah, it doesn't really know what the Flyers, like, basically you have no words to describe right now because of how frustrating the Flyers have been over the course of basically since the start of 2022. The Flyers have not won a single game in the year of 2022.
Yeah, their last win was December 29th.
It's unbelievable at this point. And we haven't done it upon in a little bit. That's also granted with the Flyers' frustration at this point.
And why would you want to do one with what's going on?
Exactly. Dude, I can barely tolerate making post-game videos. Why would I want to sit here for an hour?
I wholeheartedly understand that. I feel like everyone here has that same type of reaction, and it's getting to the lowest of the low of the low with this Flyers team right now. 8 straight losses again. You lost to the Islanders last night. You play the Islanders again tonight, which could be 9 straight losses. And what I think the giveaway today at the Wells Fargo Center is a beer stein.
The beer stein.
Honestly, if they lose, that's not a good sign, because who knows what Philadelphia fans are going to do. Maybe they throw that shit on the ice.
It's funny you say that, because I think the last time they gave out the beer stein, I think they did it after the game.
That's your smart decision.
Yeah. So, and I think that actually might have been I'm trying to remember what game that was, but it was early in the 1920 season. And I remember everybody was complaining because they ended up losing the game. And everybody was like, "Oh, I wanted to throw this on the ice." Like, one guy next to me was kind of joking around about it. But yeah, that was terrible. That was just oh God.
And it's just only really, that's basically the entire feeling that we all have, Chris. We just don't know what the rest of the season entails for us. It's probably going to be more pain and misery like it always has been for this entire thing.
And like, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like,
all good.
Am I the only one who's sitting here and I'm looking at this and I'm like, they've only played 38 games?
Yes.
No, you're not the only one.
You're not the only one.
38 games.
It's only January, man.
More than half the year left. I'm like, oh my God.
That's what happens when you have an entire month of April to play. So that's what happens when you start later as well. And then the NHL, I know it was talked about today, they're going to be rescheduling some of the games for the makeups in that span where the Olympic break would have been. So who knows what games are going to be moved and whatnot. But the Flyers have 4 games to be remade or something like that. It's Washington, Pittsburgh, Carolina, and Detroit, right?
Yes.
So who knows if that 2-week span they're going to remake those or...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be. I was thinking the Islanders game, but that was the one that was put tonight and switched out to Detroit. That was so weird how they did that.
Yeah. I don't know why they did that.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess it's probably something that had to do with the Wings schedule. Would be my guess. But
that'd be the only thing I could think of. And then you also have this Thursday coming up, Jake Voracek and the Columbus Blue Jackets return to Philadelphia. That'll be Voracek's first game back in Philly since being traded. That's going to be it's going to be a weird night, definitely. Voracek's going to get some type of honor video, but it would be something if the Flyers have a chance to lose 10 straight games if Voracek and the Blue Jackets do it. That would mean something.
Yeah. I'm hoping Jake can play, because I don't think anybody knows this, but he's on the COVID list. And he's been out a couple games now. So I'm hoping he can play, because I'm going to be in attendance. And as everybody knows, Voracek was my favorite Flyer. So, it's
question is, what Voracek jersey are you wearing?
My Czech Republic.
Good choice.
With him with the captaincy.
Good choice. So, Jim, you, as many as other Flyers fans, are just annoyed, frustrated as anyone could be with this team. It basically feels like at any point it can go wrong, and it's been going wrong for a while. This season is honestly the worst. Probably worse than last season, worse than the 06-07 season. And it's just like, what's in your mind? Can you even think of the process? What the hell is going on with this Flyers team?
I don't know.
Good answer.
Like, you really can't put your finger on anything, right? It's just like mess. It's a mess. Like, what's the rule? What can go wrong will go wrong.
Yep. What can go wrong will go wrong.
That's exactly what is happening. Like, it's. I want to say, they can tweak the roster still. So I have two schools of thought, and this is what I usually do with things. I try to look at, pros and cons. I look at this roster when healthy, and everyone's in the lineup. Like, this isn't an okay roster, right? If things go their way, if they add another, piece or two, this could be a very good team, I think with the moves they made in the offseason, I'm not sure anybody thought they were a cup contender after those 3 trades. Or, I'll speak for myself. I didn't think that they were done after those 3 moves. In my mind, it was like, okay, that's phase 1. What's phase 2 going to be? Because when you look at the roster, there's still glaring weaknesses, right? Like Yandel playing with Braun. Like, yeah, your third pair still needs work. There was just so much that we needed to go right. For example, Keith Yandel, and he went the complete opposite way. I think Ristolainen's been respectable. Travis Sanheim seems to be stepping his game up. Ryan Ellis got hurt right away. And that was supposed to be that was been like the domino effect. Like, that was the main piece that was going to allow the other defensive pairings to kind of slide in to where they belonged. Yeah. And when he went out, immediately we went right back to what was going on last season with no Niskanen, where it's just kind of been like a jumbled up, mash of pairings and whatnot.
And then Provorov gets blamed because of that when he's playing with 3 to 4 guys every other game. It's brutal. And
like, we're frustrated as fans watching that, but you have to imagine Provorov's a proud guy, busts his ass, leads the team in ice time, plays the tough minutes. Imagine his frustration. I think you're starting to hear it come out a little bit in press conferences and whatnot. The guy's frustrated.
And to add to that too, especially with him getting a streak broken over COVID, like that's brutal for him. And he's a guy that doesn't want to miss games, and he loses it because of that. And, it's just everything. Again, like a couple months ago, I guess it was November, I had mentioned that they found out rock bottom had a basement. They found out that basement had rock bottom. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like they're
digging themselves a new hole.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I'm trying to think of 2 teams right now in the NHL that are, going through their entire train wreck right now. One being the Philadelphia Flyers. I think they're closer and closer to becoming a laughingstock in the league with how everything has gone this season. And did anyone see the Leon Draisaitl press conference this afternoon?
Yes.
With arguing with that one reporter.
Yeah.
Just think about how bad the Edmonton season has gone with just the way they've been playing lately.
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna have to watch it now.
Yeah, it's like I'm not sure who was asking the question, but you could tell Draisaitl was pissed. He was only giving 1-word responses, and then the reporter clapped back at him saying, "Why are you so pissy?" It's just like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just giving you an answer. Yeah. I'm just like, what do you expect him to do? It's just like, you feel bad for Draisaitl in that point. You feel bad for McDavid, but Edmonton, it just also was bad as well. But I don't think, if I'm looking at Edmonton right now, because the standings, there are definitely other teams in this league that you could say were probably going to be bad from the get-go. Ottawa, of course, they're still a team that's finding their way to rebuild. Buffalo, Montreal, I didn't expect that much of a free fall, but they're bad. Arizona, you were expecting them to be bad. Seattle probably had a little more expectations to be better, but they're not good. And then the rest of the league, you would expect the Flyers would have been better this year. They're in free fall. Edmonton, they started off really hot for the start of the season, and now they have lost they're 2-6-2 in their last 10. They've lost 3 straight. So they're not as hot right now. Look at that Pacific Division. You have teams like San Jose and Anaheim and Los Angeles in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place, where teams like, even though Calgary, they missed a lot of games with COVID, but a lot of those teams that got off the hot starts to start the season, they're a little bit dropping down the standings. But Calgary's defense, they missed a lot of games with COVID, and they're still, I think, a pretty good team.
Yeah, and you know what? With this season so far, there's I'm not sure I've ever seen the league as top heavy as it is. You know, there's like you look at each division. You're looking at Florida, Tampa, Toronto. The Bruins haven't played the same amount of games, but I'll put the Bruins. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to put the Bruins in that category. It's Florida, Tampa, Toronto. You look at the Metro, New York, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington, and then there's a steep drop. You look at the Western Conference, Colorado, St. Louis, Nashville, Minnesota, a bit of a drop. And then in the Pacific, it's the Pacific's kind of, you know, up for grabs a little bit. There's you know, you mentioned the Flames still have to play a bunch of games. The Oilers have been bad for an extended stretch here, and you mentioned they had a hot start. It's, you know, they've had a bunch of games postponed, which, you know, could be contributing to that, but we're looking back to the early December here. They've been struggling. 2 wins in over a month. Oof. For the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, they were 16-5 on December 1st. They are 18-4-2. I'm sorry, 18-15-2 currently. Mm-hmm. It's just insane.
Yeah, lost 6 in a row, 2-6-2 in their last 10. Their goal differential was really high. Now it's at straight 0, 117 even. And they've been struggling.
I think that's what happens when you really don't have the depth defensively, and also when you rely on 39-40-year-old Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, who is not that good.
And also their problem is they rely too much on some of the best players in the world. I mean, when you have to rely on McDavid and Draisaitl every night, and I get it, they are the best players in the world, but it's the NHL. You need more than, you know, one line or one power play unit to score for you, and when that's not happening, and I know they've also dealt with injury, and I think losing Larson was bad for them to Seattle, and then Klefbom, he hasn't played. This will be this is his 2nd year, right? He hasn't played. He was out all last year. So yeah, I mean, obviously they've had problems, and I remember that big game the Flyers had back in October when it felt like these games were meaningful for them. Going up against Edmonton on TNT, they were 5-0. Flyers were riding pretty high there. They ended up picking up a big win, and that felt great because the Oilers were really good at the time, and both teams have kind of just completely gone down from kind of what you mentioned earlier, Amedeo.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the Flyers stretch right now, so the Flyers' last win was December 29th against the Seattle Kraken in that overtime game. And then the losing started December 30th against San Jose in overtime. Then you go to the beginning of the year against the Los Angeles Kings. You lose that game 6-3. You lose the game against Anaheim when your COVID situation really starts to happen when, you know, Konechny goes down. Well, Konechny did play in that game. You got Giroux going down. You got Provorov going down. Then eventually it became Konechny, Sanheim, all those other players. Then you were forced to play the Pittsburgh game on national television with barely anyone there. You get crushed in that game. You lose to San Jose in overtime, and that was when me and Jim were in the press box that day, and we're talking about literally everything. And the Flyers had the lead in that game, and they lost with Tomas Hertl getting a hat trick there. Then the game against Carolina, that gets postponed. The game against Boston, you lose that 3-2. You lose 3-2 against the Rangers, and you lose 4-1 yesterday against the Islanders, who you are playing again tonight. And I'm not because there are stretches in some of these games where the Flyers, they have their moments. They do. I would say guys like Cam York has really impressed me. Joel Farabee has been buzzing as of lately. Carter Hart, he continues to be Carter Hart. He's never the issue with this team this season. But when they have their good stretches and they have that chance, you know, it was one of those games. It was against the Rangers. They take the 2-1 lead in the 3rd period. And then it just snaps like that. They allow 2 goals. And what was it, a span of not even 5 minutes? And they lose the lead there.
Yeah. I mean, I was at that game. It kind of felt like at that point when York had scored that goal, they might have been able to squeak out a win there. And again, I've said it before. when one thing goes right, it's like the next thing goes bad. I mean, they couldn't even hold the lead for a minute. It was 37 seconds, and then the Rangers tied it. And then you have the goal a couple minutes later. That was the icing on the cake there. And again, just everything is just brutal for them. Whether it's defensively, and it's like 1 minute they have a good shift, the next minute they're stuck in their own zone, or their goaltender's bailing them out. And the problem is the last 3 games they've been, I guess you could argue the last 3 games have been more enjoyable to watch because they've at least had their moments. I thought the Rangers game was a pretty good game. Overall, I felt like it was just a good hockey game, to be honest. But, if their problem is they're having too many uneven performances where they're good one period, they're bad the next, or they have a really bad start or whatever. And that's just been killing them. And good teams are able to find ways to win, and bad teams are able to find ways to lose. And the Flyers are just continue to find ways to lose. And that's the reason why their record and play has dipped so much.
And I want to bring up, I know like positives are very, very hard to discuss with this team because there barely are any. But guys that I'm watching in the past couple of games, like I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, Joel Farabee and Cam York, they have been really like, I guess, some of the few bright spots with the way the team has been playing recently. Joel Farabee's had a nice stretch with him. Cam York has been really nice since he's been called up on that. Well, his first game was against the Anaheim Ducks. Then he gets his first NHL goal against the Rangers. And he's really earning himself some of those top 4 minutes. And when Provorov was out, he was playing the most minutes on the team. So I like the way Mike Yeo has been using him. He's also getting first power play time, even though the power play yesterday was not that good. No. It was pretty ugly. I like the way York has been utilized. Farabee, he got the breakaway chance yesterday. He's getting those chances basically every game at this point. He had a couple of those against Boston. Yeah. He had some chances against the Rangers, and he continues to get those chances. So those are your, I would say, few bright spots. And then Konechny at his first goal since November 18th. 20 been that long. Basically 2 months at this point, where he's hasn't scored a goal, and that's its 100th career goal. So he finally got the monkey off his back, but it doesn't make it any less more frustrating.
One of my 2 positives in the game last night. I'm like, all right, well, at least Konechny scored, because and then I was thinking to myself, if they're in a situation where they might have been up a goal, like in that Rangers game when they went up 2-1, I'm like, all right, if they can get the empty net, I'd say put Konechny out there. Try to give him the empty netter. I mean, it's things like that can give any guy confidence, especially when they're not playing well. One thing I will say, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Like, one thing that I've noticed a lot from like pictures and things like that of the guys like playing and everything, it seems so upbeat, even though they are playing horrible and they aren't winning games. They might be going on a second 10-game losing streak in a season. I don't even know how that's possible, but it seems like they're still finding ways to be a team together. They're not like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's kind of happy and upbeat, and they're smiling at practice and everything. I don't know if you guys have noticed it as well, but that's one thing I've noticed that's kind of at least kind of had, I wouldn't say kept my head high, but it's been one thing that's like, all right, well, at least they're, you know what I mean? I'd like to see that instead of pictures of them being all doom and gloom and everything. And I don't know. That's just one thing that I've noticed, but
we also got some breaking news here as well from the Flyers. We got an injury update. Flyers center Kevin Hayes underwent a procedure this morning to drain fluid from his abductor region. He's expected to return to play in 3 to 4 weeks. So now we don't have Kevin Hayes. I just saw Jim retweet that. Then I see the Flyers tweet that as well, and it's just okay.
See, it's all bad news with this team. There's never anything good. I mean, Cam York coming up and playing. So I want to talk about the Hayes injury, but if you want to focus on a bright spot, Cam York, I mean, this guy, if he should never play another AHL game again if he plays like this. Like
he's up here, and he's making the team out of Cam next year too.
Yeah, man, he looks good. And maybe I tweeted this out a couple days ago. Maybe it's recency bias, and this is not a slight against Provorov or Sanheim, because sometimes players just take time before they figure it out a little bit. But Cam York looks more poised, looks more calm, looks more in control than those 2 guys did in their rookie season. I think, like, noticeably, like, wow, like this guy's confident, looks good. He cannot play another game in the AHL as long as he looks like he does now. And in my opinion, he should never be paired with a Yandel or a Connaughton or a Sealer. He needs to be playing with the Provorov, Sanheim, or Braun, in my opinion. And I left Ristolainen off of there. People are going to ask why. I don't think I want York playing with Ristolainen yet. Bring him along slowly. Give him responsibility. And if it looks like he can grab onto it, give him a little bit more, like dangle the carrot type thing. You don't need to throw him into the fire and let him get burnt right away. Like, just take your time, but hurry up kind of thing.
And the question from this point with the Hayes injury, do you honestly, with everything that he has gone through, the loss of his brother, 2 abdominal surgeries, and now having to drain through fluid and he's out 3 to 4 weeks, when the Flyers, where you're at this season, you're not making the playoffs, you're probably not even going to sniff them, do you consider shutting Hayes down for the season and just let him heal?
Yeah. I said that months ago, like before he even came back.
I mean, they openly admitted they rushed him back. They rushed Ellis back. Clearly, they rushed Brassard back. I don't even think we've heard any update on him in, 2 weeks?
He came back for the 1 game, and that was it, right?
Yeah, and he was in practice and played the New Jersey game, I believe it was.
Right now, the only people you see, I'm looking at Cap Friendly as we speak for injured reserve. The only LTIR guy that's on here is Ryan Ellis. And then you're looking at some of the other people. That's Sean Couturier, Derek Brassard, Nate Thompson, Patrick Brown, Sam Morin, who continues to be on IR. So does someone get LTIR'd, or do we not know? Does Hayes eventually get put on that? Who knows?
You should. I mean, you have a couple candidates now. Like, I don't understand why not. Like, just leave the possibility open. Even if it's you're going to acquire somebody with a crappy contract for the end of this season. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To give a contender some space.
Yeah. No, the thing is, are you able to put a guy on LTIR if it's only 3 to 4 weeks?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Isn't it a certain limit they have to be out to put him on LTIR?
I am not sure. I would assume you would have to be out a specific period of time.
Like Couturier, for example, he's just week to week, and he's on IR.
Yeah, and maybe your injury has to be like in a span of months or something like that to be put on LTIR, like what Kucherov was with Tampa Bay. I'm not sure what the scenario qualifies for that, but I think at this point, shutting them down should be considered because just where you're at in the season, and it's just not going to get any better at this point. Like, I think that's one thing. But just looking at this Flyers team right now, where they're at in the standings, and those questions are going to be coming up as soon as the trade deadline gets closer and closer, because when's the deadline? At the end of March or something like that?
Yeah, around there.
Because you got that weird schedule in February where you have those games that are going to be rescheduled. Now the trade deadline's at the end of March. So you have to think about that. And those ongoing questions are going to continue to happen. All the UFAs that are on this Flyers team right now. You got, the biggest one, Claude Giroux. He's a UFA coming up. You also got guys like Justin Braun, Martin Jones. You got, Keith Yandel, all of these other UFAs that are on this Flyers team that, also Rasmus Ristolainen, he is also a UFA as well coming into this offseason. So there's definitely going to be those questions brought about. What do the Flyers do with the trade deadline this year? Since, they're most likely not going to, make the playoffs. Do you sell off some assets, get some young guys and draft picks in return, build this team something up for next year? There's going to be a lot of questions. The big one's going to be Claude Giroux, even though that's basically his own decision at this point because he has the no movement clause and he has to make that decision himself. And who knows if they're having those discussions right now, but that's basically a wait and see until it happens. You'll know. I think, when you hear like those reports that a bunch of scouts are seeing Flyers games at this point, maybe closer to the trade deadline, maybe that's when you find out if Giroux does waive that no movement clause, but that's still something.
It's funny today. My dad calls me this morning as soon as I wake up. He's like, because one of his buddies posts on Facebook that Giroux waived his no trade. I'm like, Dad, and I listen, I just woke up like maybe 5 minutes before this, and I'm like, Dad, what are you talking about? I'm like, he doesn't even have a no trade clause. To begin with, he has a no move clause, and then I'm like, they're two different things. And second, I'm like, where did you see that? I'm like, that's not something. So it's funny you bring that up because my dad all day he's like, he's like, I still haven't seen anything on that. I said, Dad, it's probably not real. It's probably not real. So it's yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that, but yeah, I mean, look, it's funny now that I'm thinking about it, because with Hayes out, I'd have to think Frost gets moved up tonight, right? Like, he can't keep playing the fourth line.
You would think. I mean, based off pure skill, but so here's what I'm noticing that they're doing. Like, they called up Bunneman, they called up Mayhew. Those are bigger bodies, right? They're playing the Islanders again.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if you put Frost on a 1-2-3 line, he's not going to do anything against the Islanders, you know? So the thought is, well, you know, we need big bodies to play against the, I mean, you saw it. Like, you're just not going to, this team is not going to get much offensively against the, not a lot of teams really do get much, but in particular, this Flyers team. So I imagine the goal is to keep the score as low as possible and hope that you win 1-0 or 2-1, you know, in these games. Yeah, from what it sounds like, they're in press conferences to me, is they're trying to get Frost to grow different parts of his game, but I don't like that anymore. Like, the guy is here for offense, so help him amplify those aspects of his game. I don't care. I don't need
sitting out and him playing fourth line, because it's like one night they say his offense looked good, but his other details didn't. And then when the other details look good, the offense didn't show up as much. It's like, pick a side, like, because there's games where I'll notice, like, I feel like he's all over it, and then he'll get demoted, or he won't play, or he'll be like a scratch. Like, him playing on, I mean, it's the same, and it's not the first time they've done this with a guy. They did this with Lindblom last year. They even did it this year. What happens when AV gets fired up, goes up, plays first line, scores his first goal of the year against Colorado? Like, it doesn't surprise me. Sanheim starts to play well. Brown ends up potting a goal. Yes, I know it was a shitty goal against Arizona, but still, you know, it doesn't surprise me that certain guys are starting to play better. And again, it's not like they're doing it with York. They're letting him play. They're giving him minutes. They're letting him play top pair. But Zamula's down there in the AHL still, and you got Yandel and Sealer still playing up here,
and Connaughton.
Yeah, Connaughton as well. It's a problem to me, and it's not the first time. I mean, it's.
And then the other question that does get brought up is, you know, with, you know, I know, you know, the couple of weeks ago with the Bobby Clark thing on the podcast talking about Hextall and his drafting, you know, the whole Cam Carr thing and all that crap. But I know there was other reports that. And then the other reports were talking about the Flyers actually wanted Heiskanen and not Makar. So basically, that shows the entire discrepancy of what the hell happened back then. But it's just questioning, you know, the prospects that we've had in our system. You know, some of them do perform well in the AHL, and then when they come up to the NHL, they don't, you know, perform as good as you would expect them to. And does that come to the question? The development when you come up into the NHL, how they're doing this with Morgan Frost, how they've probably done it with a couple of other players on this team. They probably, some players don't live up to the hype. Is Konechny getting completely fucked up from AV's system and it's just washed into his head to why he is struggling this much? I don't know that reason there. Forcing guys like Morgan Frost, who is an offensively minded player, to focus on a two-way game, which probably shouldn't be the main focus. He was a Phantom's main penalty killer down there, and he was producing
PK time.
Yeah, he was producing down with the Phantoms, but when he comes up here, no, we got to focus on his two-way game. We got to focus on his defensive game. But how is he supposed to contribute if he's on the fourth line?
And that's the thing. I don't mind that they're molding him into a defensive, a more defensive player, because that's always been an aspect that I feel like could have gotten better with him. But don't just take away his offense. I mean, if you're going to try to fix one thing, at least let him do what he can do. And I just don't see anything beneficial for him playing the fourth line. I mean, again, you might as well send him down to the AHL and let him play with the Phantoms if you're going to keep playing him on the fourth line, because I just don't see what makes any sense there. Because again, when he got called up, I had agreed with Jason Martinez. He said it on another podcast I do with me and Yariv. He said, you know, you tell him he's up here for the year. 100% agree with that. I still agree with that. I think the same way with York. Regardless of if Yandel is healthy or whoever's healthy and whoever else can play, those guys should still be up here. So, and that's the thing. I mean, to me, it just doesn't make any sense when you go from having Frost playing second line, third line. I mean, he played wing last night, and I know they've molded him at center. They've basically been trying to do that since they drafted him, and I feel like they're most likely going to continue to do that. But again, it doesn't make any sense for me if he's playing the fourth line, and that's the same thing with Lindblom and guys, and honestly, even guys like McEwen, who don't even really seem like he doesn't seem like he's a fourth line guy, you know what I mean? But he's still gonna play the fourth line. Like he's a guy who could play third line. I mean, why not at this point? I personally I feel like they should just try to change as many different things as possible. I mean, obviously they're not going to do that because the players want to win at the same time. They don't want to continue to lose. So that's where it all kind of runs into. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see what's beneficial from Frost on the fourth line getting 6 to 8 minutes a night.
And Jim, just going on that topic of player development and drafting and all that crap, just like your thoughts on like do you like this organizational just like philosophy on developing their players, or do you think it's just like a mix of bad development? Do you think it's a mix of bad drafting in some cases with Hextall, or like what do you think the entirety of it is? Is it just an organizational flaw?
I think it's both. Obviously, I'm not very happy with Ron Hextall and the job that he did. I think there's a lot of reasons that I don't like Ron Hextall, but I'll focus mainly on the question. So yeah, his drafting. I mean, everything that's come out. So let's focus on that. Not listening to scouts, I think, is a major issue, right? You're paying these guys to do a job to give you information on players, right? And they give you these players. You might want to listen to them because they do it for a living. Not that Hextall doesn't know what he's doing, because I believe he was a scout at some point. But you have to listen to these guys. At the same time, it's like the Flyers needed a center at the time, and they still need centers now. So I understand the pick. Once it's made, right, you're taking the number 2 overall pick. Everyone wants to keep saying consensus number 1 or 2 overall pick, whatever. It is now your responsibility as an organization to develop this player, right? And they failed to do that for whatever reason. Whether you want to blame Nolan Patrick, whether you want to blame Ron Hextall for picking him, whether you want to go and blame the player development guys. And I think that's who we need to start focusing on, because all of these players, at one point, the Flyers had,
2017, they were ranked by ESPN the number 1 prospect pool in the league.
There you go. And how many of those guys can you sit here and say right now, man, this guy really, really panned out? Like, thank God for this player. Not one.
Not many. Carter Hart's the only one.
And don't get me wrong when I say this, but currently has a 2.94 goals against average. Doesn't look like anything spectacular this season. Again, not knocking Carter Hart.
Yeah.
Young guy. Goalies usually come into their own 24, 25, 26 years old. But he's not blowing you away from game to game.
I mean, it's pretty hard to blow you away when you got defense like that in front of you.
Exactly. So it's like, what did we just go through that for? You didn't draft.
I think one thing that I saw too was it was one of those other, like, I think his name is what are those NHL analytics pages on Twitter, like, what's his name, Jay Fresh. He has the picture of Patrick Laine with the sunglasses or something like that. I think he was going through every goaltender in the league and showing like their 5-on-5 stats, and I think Carter Hart was ranked like top 10 in terms of 5-on-5 analytics or something like that, from what I saw. So it's like, yeah, the numbers don't pop out to you. 2.9 Thor. That's just, I think, shows how many shots he's facing per game and how many of those goals go in
games. Like,
there
haven't been as many blowouts this year as there was last year. But like last night, it kind of felt like there could have been more at times. The Boston game felt like it could have been more. Even the Rangers game. Again, it's not like he has to make as many. The one thing I will say is their penalty kill overall has been a lot better than it was last year. And Hart hasn't had to make as many out of position saves because overall the defensive structure has been better, but obviously it hasn't been good enough because really the biggest problem for them is the offense. They're not scoring. I mean, I feel like defensively overall they haven't been great because they're not that great of a team, but it's been a hell of a lot better than last season. And really anything could have been better than last year. But you get my point. And that's the thing. Like one thing that I look at with the whole Hextall thing is I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, this guy did this or this guy whatever, but one thing that I like to do when I look at things like this is I try to look at everything. I look at, okay, where did this guy mess up? But I also look at it in reverse. Like, did the scouts not listen to Hextall? You know what I mean? That's kind of where I look at it at the same token, because it's like there's many different people that I don't want to say are at fault, but there's probably reasons why a lot of these guys didn't pan out. I also think a lot of it is bad luck. I mean, if you look at a lot of their centers and a lot of the guys they drafted, and not even just centers, but Rubtsov's dealt with injury, LeBurge has dealt with injury, O'Brien, I believe, has dealt with injury. There's been many, many different guys, and that's just only a handful. I remember, I think Renel Fazlev, who was a big center from Russia, he dealt with injury. Sam Morin's been one of the guys that's dealt with injury. I mean, the list is huge of guys that have dealt with injury. And that's the thing. I mean, I don't know if it's bad luck or if it's just, you know, they can't get the right mix or whatever. I have no idea what it is, but it certainly doesn't help when you kind of are basically, you know, at that point, Hextall was trying to be bad. I mean, if you go back and realistically, one of the first trades he made was Hartnell for Umberger. And I think Hartnell put up like 30 goals in Columbus that year. Like, felt like they were trying to be a bad team, and they were that year. That season they were brutal.
Well, he let you know right away that he wasn't playing for the current season and the current players. He was already looking 2, 3, 4 seasons down the road.
Yeah.
Because the only reason he acquired Umberger, right, was because his contract expired a year earlier or something like that, right?
Yeah, he was trying to shed Hartnell's salary.
Yeah, and that wasn't going to happen for like 2 seasons. So it's like looking back, it's like, yeah, I get the move, and sure, it makes sense, but what are you doing for the team right now? Like, I don't know. I'm just so over. I'm so over looking towards the future, because that's what we just did for the last 7 years.
You know, Jim, it's funny you say that, because I'm tired of looking at the past. I'm tired of looking at like the total mess ups. I'm tired of looking at, well, we could have had this guy. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's done. Like, you can't change it. You're not going to go back and fix it. And honestly, if you go back and say the Flyers do take Heiskanen, does Patrick go to Dallas and have an unbelievable start to his career like Heiskanen? You know what I mean? It could have just been reversed, and Heiskanen gets injured here too.
Well, that comes back to the whole thing, right? And it's like, okay, what if they do draft Heiskanen? Do they have the proper people in place to bring him along? Right. So it comes back to what could be the main issue is player development. Like Ivan Provorov, we all thought he was going to be a stud. Not people that weren't just Flyers fans were talking about Provorov could potentially be a future Norris winner. Right. So it's not that not everyone was wrong. Something's happening inside that is just crushing the development of these players.
And that's why I think a new coach, a new system, and basically to try to get a new identity is the biggest part of this offseason. I mean, I thought last year was the most important offseason for them in like 10 years. It's this year because it's even worse. And you still have to go out and you have to find pieces. And I still think there's a lot of different things that they need. Like I wouldn't mind another shoot first guy. If I'm the Flyers, I'm looking at Tarasenko. I know that might sound crazy to some people with his cap, but that's a guy that I think wanted completely bolstered your power play completely from, you know, it makes it even better. If Giroux is still here, I think it's even better because you have a guy like Giroux who's an elite passer. You add Tarasenko into the mix, and overall, it's another shoot first guy. That's a guy that they've been missing, and another guy like Atkinson, but has more of a skill set than Atkinson. Nothing against Atkinson, but Tarasenko to me is the better player than Atkinson. But again, like if they can get another shooter, another center would be nice, obviously, because your Hayes is still dealing with injury and he's going to be dealing with it next season as well. I wouldn't be surprised. And I just feel like they're 100% going to need more from guys. And also the thing is, guys need to step up and score. I mean, I think a lot of that can change with a new coach and a new system and maybe a couple months off and use the summer to their advantage. But yeah, I mean, basically, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm at the point where I kind of just want the season to end, and I'm just kind of going. Like last night, I was thinking to myself when I'm doing my video, I'm like, all right, this is another game, another video. That's
another
it.
chore.
Yeah, it's just over and over and over again. And but yeah, I mean, it's been brutal.
Yeah. The pain is real, Chris. I feel you all there. But before we get into our next topic, we got to bring in a little sponsor here. So we got, if you're looking to get any tickets to any upcoming sporting events, concerts, whatever you think of that, definitely utilize the code down below. You see it scrolling across your screen. Use either FLYERSFANMANIA or TTP Sports for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. That could be hockey, football. The playoffs just started. Basketball. Hopefully when baseball does return, if it does, definitely utilize that at SeatGeek to get $20 off your first purchase. Definitely utilize that. So just like even going to, there's a comment right here that I want to bring up though. It's from Philly Ghost. It's still going back to that, draft and everything right there. Like I can understand, yeah, you could have drafted Heiskanen, you could have drafted Maher, but I feel like everyone keeps saying, oh, you could have drafted Elias Pettersson. If I'm remembering that draft, honestly, Vancouver reached the draft Pettersson.
Huge reach.
He was not expected to go top 5, top 10 at all. I think he was mid of the first round.
And one thing I think a lot of people forget too, that Jim, I know you mentioned it with Patrick, the consensus one. I remember jumping for joy when they got Patrick. Like everybody was so like holy shit, they just drafted Nolan Patrick kind of thing. Like that's at least how I was, because I knew at the time that he was the number 1 pick, and everybody was like, all right, the Flyers are going to get Hischier. And we were like, okay, they'll get Hischier. And then I was thinking about it. And obviously I was young. I think I was 13. Holy shit. I was 13.
We were all young back then.
Yeah. But still, like it's just, I remember he was very high in that draft. And again, I don't want to sit here and talk too much about the past and all that, but yeah, I mean, it's just brutal how a lot of these guys have developed, and yeah, it's honestly the entire thing is such a shame, because they probably would be in a better spot right now if they were at least able to get some of those guys to be on an NHL roster. But
even if like a guy like Ryan Ellis could play, things would be a lot better. I mean,
probably be much better. Yeah.
I mean, that was an incredible trade. So it's like it kind of sucks for Chuck Fletcher, because he has, in my opinion, tried to make this team better.
Yeah,
I mean, you trade
that as well.
You trade Phil Myers and Nolan Patrick for Ryan Ellis. Like, you're instantly trading for the best defenseman on your roster by moving 2 guys who haven't really contributed much the last season or so. And yeah, we had high hopes and expectations or whatever, but we need gratification now. Like, we've been through it already 4, 5, 6 years. So I understood the move. Loved Ryan Ellis, one of my favorite players outside the Flyers, and I don't have too many of those guys. I was stoked when I got him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he got hurt. We don't really know what's going on, which is kind of scary, because it's been months now.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's just been a domino effect. So much has gone wrong. Almost any move. Oh, it's not true, because Atkinson's looked very well, very good. But
I feel like Linen's been their most consistent D-man throughout the year.
He's been okay. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I'm a huge Ristolainen fan, but I'm also not one of those guys who will, come out and say that the 2 goals that they gave up last night were purely because of Ristolainen screening the goalie, because it's just not true. You're looking for reasons to pick on him.
Yeah.
And that was his first game back coming off COVID. Of course, there's going to be some, type of rust there.
Paired up with Keith Yandel, for God's sakes. Like, come on.
That too.
You're not doing him any favors with that.
And that all wasn't just him. I mean, all 3 of them goals in that game last night. If you want to sit there and you want to blame Ristolainen, I mean, Provorov was stuck on a minute 16 shift, and didn't have much gas left in the tank to really even move on that play. And on the Nelson goal, and then the second goal was a mass of bodies in front. I mean, Jones clearly didn't see it. He was still kind of basically sitting there like this when the puck went in.
Was already in the net.
Yeah, and then the Islanders' third goal. I mean, 4 guys are basically standing around Beauvillier when he's sitting there in the slot.
Yeah.
I mean, it just reminds me of goals from last year where they give guys too much space in front, too much time to work. And, yeah, I mean, overall, it just was not a good game for them defensively.
Yeah, and just going to some of these other like young guys that we're talking about right here. Like, yeah, Provorov, I feel like some fans are being way too harsh on him, but I do feel like, yeah, because it's all built up frustration at this point. I do feel like some people on social media especially get really extreme with the frustration. I know like a lot of people like to talk about on Twitter. Oh, remember when Jack Eichel was still available? That's what I saw popped up on my Twitter feed right now. And I was just like, okay, man, the Flyers were not getting Jack Eichel. They had nothing to get him. So that dream was brushed out the door when that was even announced. But just going to Ivan Provorov, like, yeah, I feel like there's fair criticism for him and there's unfair criticism about him, because it does suck, because look at Provorov's 10 years since he's been in the league. His defensive partners, he's had Andrew McDonald, Shane Gostisbehere, Justin Braun a little bit, Matt Niskanen, and also Ryan Ellis for 4 games. So, and like also sometimes with also Nick Sealer, Travis Sanheim. Has he played with Ristolainen yet this year?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically he's had at least 6 different defensive pairings throughout his entire career with the Flyers, and it's just like this dude can't catch a break. Like, he can't find that one consistent guy, and when he does find that consistent guy in Niskanen, and they had a really great season, he ends up retiring. And then last season happened, and then you get Ryan Ellis. They look really good for 4 games, and then he gets injured, and everything's shit because of that. So. But I also do feel like there's a little bit of fair criticism towards him, because, like, yes, he's been in the league for a while. You would think at this point, like, yes, he is still young. You would expect him to find that way to develop to where he doesn't get hindered by who his defensive partner is. Maybe he carries that guy. Maybe he makes the defensive partner better. I think that's the fair criticism towards Ivan Provorov. I feel like there's another level in his game that he's not yet finding. Is that because he's hindered from his defensive partner?
I think I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
I feel like it's more of he's 25 and hasn't necessarily had a consistent partner through most of his career. He's had one year where he played with a guy consistently for most of that season, unless somebody was injured. I think one of the only times they didn't play together that year, him and Niskanen, was because when Niskanen got suspended in Game 5 against Montreal. That was the only time I remember Provorov playing with somebody different. But yeah, it's been brutal, and it makes me think about Niskanen too. I wonder if Niskanen retired because of AV. Looking back and thinking and all of that, like with the coach, and obviously they didn't play great in the playoffs. One of the reasons they lost was just their overall game. But it makes me wonder if anything of what happened here in Philly led to Matt Niskanen retiring.
Could have been. I mean, when you get to his age and your body breaks, when you play the game the way he did, you know, I think he had a serious injury the year before, and with all the COVID stuff coming up, I'm sure
he also already won a cup.
Yeah, I mean, what's he got to play for?
Yeah, it's if you look at, like, even like for the Flyers, like, I know like we hate talking about the future and all that stuff, but like the future of this season and even after this season, like I remember seeing a comment in here about Chuck Fletcher, and like that question's definitely going to come up too. Like, how short, like I see it right here, why is Chuck Fletcher still the GM of the Flyers? And it's the question comes up, like, how short is Fletcher's leash and towards the end of the season? Like, is it going to be short enough towards the trade deadline to where he's in charge of the moves? Does, Dave Scott and everyone in that front office, try to make a decision and do something else? We saw Montreal hire their new GM. Briere was one of the finalists, but he does not get hired. So is Briere going to be in the later plans for the Flyers? That's one of the questions you can also ask too, because he has been down with the Phantoms. He has been subbing there as a coach. So I think like we all know, there's probably more plans for Briere left in store, but how soon is that going to happen? Because do you think it's going to be sooner rather than later with everything that's been going wrong this season? does Dave Scott, does Comcast to decide, okay, it's not working with Fletcher and this staff. Let's try to bring in a new guy. Let's try to see what he can do and see how that works. Would that be a guy like Briere? Do they bring in a new GM, a new president, or anything like that? Because your direction towards the trade deadline right now, you're looking to selling because you're not making the playoffs. And how are you going to work that trade deadline? I have no idea. What are you going to try to look for? What are you going to try to get in return for some of these players? Because I think at this point, because right now, what's the Flyers' average age? I think they're one of the top oldest teams in the league, right? I think they are at least the top 5.
That is so crazy to me because like 2 years ago, they were like one of the youngest.
Last year, I think they were like in the top 5 youngest. This year, the top 5 oldest. So that really changed. So do you try to get a lot of young pieces? Do you maybe not focus on draft picks? Do you try to go after prospects at the trade deadline? Like, I know Claude Giroux is probably going to get you the most in return, but like, what would your focus be on returns at the deadline for both of you? Like, Jim, start with you. Like, what would you think that focus should be?
So for Giroux, Flyers don't have center prospects, as crazy as that is, because it's been like that for a long time now. They need center prospects. I don't believe you're going to get, and I'm working on an article. I'll probably have it out later this week on hwhockey.net, but I don't believe you're going to get a new hook from Colorado. I think that's unrealistic. I mean, the guy's putting up points already. He's arguably a top 6 forward as is. You just can't crack the top 6 in Colorado, so I think that's unrealistic. You go to Minnesota because Chuck's got connections there. And this is all assuming that Chuck Fletcher is the GM come trade deadline, which I'm kind of thinking he might not be, but another topic. If you look at Minnesota, the first name you might think of is Marco Rossi because he's a very good young center prospect. I think he's also unrealistic. So I'm looking at next tier guys. So for Minnesota, I'm looking at a guy like Adam Beckman. I know he's not a center, but he's a big scoring winger. And if you're moving on from Claude Giroux, all of a sudden you need a top 6 winger. If you're moving on from JVR in the next year or so, that's another, supposedly scoring winger. Adam Beckman can put the puck in the net. So I have a couple more guys here. I'm also looking in Calgary. I mean, Calgary is a team. We don't know if Johnny Gaudreau is going to re-sign there, right? So maybe they're thinking, hey, our chips are all in. Calgary's a real tough team to play against this year. Very tough to score on. Do they need a little bit more offense? Do they need more power play help? That's Claude Giroux. So I'm looking at a guy like Connor Zary. If he's available, he's a guy I want. And then you have a dark horse team like the Los Angeles Kings, right? The Flyers have made some blockbusters with them in the past. Mike Richards for Braden Shen, Wayne Simmons. I'm rooting for the Kings to keep winning. You know why? Because they are absolutely stocked with young center prospects. And if you look at their roster, Andrei Kopitar is going to be there for a couple more years. You have Philip Deneau, who just signed a contract there.
I would have loved to know here.
I believe they have maybe one more center on the roster, but point being,
I think Turcotte's one of those centers as well if he's not been playing.
I believe Kaliev can play center, but I think he prefers wing.
Some of the names, Turcotte's a great name. Los Angeles wasn't willing to trade him for Jack Eichel, so are they willing to trade him for Giroux as a rental? Probably not, right? So I'm looking at guys, who can the Flyers get? So there's a guy, Gabe Vilardi, who I happen to like. Now, we were talking about him in the HW chat a couple days ago, and the first thing that came up was skating issues. And how sick are we of hearing that? The Flyers are drafting players that can't skate.
Remember Konechny had skating issues?
Right. And, we're looking at a Strome. We're looking at Bobby Brink. We've heard the same things. Like, how can these hockey players not skate? But Gabe Vilardi is a guy that I would keep an eye on just because I like him. He's a big kid, offensively talented. I think if you give him, he's one of those guys like a Patrick situation. He's been hurt with Los Angeles. He's not going to crack that lineup very often with the talent that they've drafted. I'm looking at Los Angeles. Can we take Gabe Vilardi? Can we sneak a first-round pick from him and maybe one more pick or prospect? But Los Angeles is a dark horse team that I'd look at. That's where I would focus. They need to get exactly what they want for Claude Giroux. And for me, that's a top center prospect, offensive prospect. And obviously the first round pick's a given. It's going to be a late first round pick, which is why I think they really need to hit on the prospect that they get back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like a lot of what you said there was good. You know, personally, I feel like if they're gonna do anything, I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think Giroux gets moved at the deadline. I think it's free agency. If anything, if they're trading, I think it's most likely going to be kind of what we talked about before the show started. Like basically, what kind of last year was Gustafson getting moved for a pick, Ralph will move for a pick. Um, I feel like it's going to be all of those expiring contracts, guys like maybe Thompson, Broussard, Yandel, Connaughton, who I believe is on a 1-year deal. Guys like that. The only guy that I don't necessarily see them uh, not re-signing that's on a 1-year deal right now, I believe is an RFA, is McEwen. He's the only guy. Brown has 1 year left on his deal. McEwen, I 100% re-sign. But yeah, I mean, I don't really see them doing anything crazy at the trade deadline. I think it's more of just a kind of get rid of a handful of contracts, swap out some picks. And as of right now, the Flyers, per Tankathon, they have they are number 6 right now in the draft. They have the 6th overall pick. Top 5 going from 1 to 5 would be Montreal, Arizona, Seattle, Buffalo, Ottawa, and then the Flyers at 6. So that would be it there. But yeah, I just don't see.
Yeah, I know when you talk about the drafts and stuff like that. I know this year Shane Wright's the I think the consensus #1 overall pick. I know some people do have their issues with Shane Wright, and they don't think he can live up to the first overall pick potential. But then you have next year's draft with Bedard and Michkov, basically, I would say be the 2 cornerstone franchise pieces of that top 2 in the draft, wherever those guys are selected, either 1 or 2.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure if the Flyers are going to look in that direction if you're trying to get that franchise center, which would be Bedard. But that's still like another whole year down the road. You're still talking about next year.
Yeah.
What the hell is going to happen? You don't even know what this team is going to be next year.
If this continues with the Flyers, I wouldn't mind a guy like Brad Lambert. Trying to think who else. Frankie Nazar. He wouldn't be a guy I wouldn't mind. Logan Cooley, but I don't think he's going to drop. I think he's going to be top 3 if anything, and I don't think this will go as bad before the Flyers get top 3, but you never know. But yeah, yes, Matthew Savoie, that will be another one as well. But yeah, I mean, look, obviously that's so far away, and I think a lot of different things change. And obviously, Jim, what you had said, we don't even know if Fletcher is the one that's kind of basically the one doing all this. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah,
that's the frustrating part because it's more kind of waiting and seeing. And
yeah,
we've been so anxious to finally see some wins, and it's like, pump the brakes again. We got to go into the wait mode, and it's like, Jesus, again.
Yeah,
and that's why I think a lot of the frustration is.
Yeah, because you expected at this point with the Hextall plan, you would be competitive. You would be a contender. And we saw that in 1920, where they were a really good team. Sadly, the bubble happened, and they didn't play up to their level, and they lost in Game 7, the semifinals. And then they haven't been able to find that spark since. So just
time to change some things up.
Yeah, like if say Fletcher does get canned, like his assistant GM does get canned as well, what's the new goal of the next GM? Like, are they going to be a puppet of Comcast and be forced to do the same crap again, or are they going to do their own direction? Or does, say, Dave Scott, does he get a new GM, or does he get a president to where that GM answers to instead of Dave Scott? Do you get a hockey guy to be that guy? Like what the Sixers have right now. They have Elton Brand, here's the GM, and then you also have Daryl Morey, who's the president of basketball operations. And Daryl Morey is the guy that makes the final decisions on everything. So do you do the same thing with the Flyers? I think that's what Pittsburgh is doing too. When you got guys like Hextall and Brian Burke as the president there, I think Brian Burke makes the final decisions over Hextall. I think Hextall's there for whenever Pittsburgh has to reset. And Brian Burke is there to try to get one last ride in with Crosby and Malkin before they eventually do have to, retire or do not play for Pittsburgh anymore. So I think the Flyers need to find something like that. Because I don't think Fletcher as president of hockey operations and GM right now, like I know like everything should not be blamed on Fletcher because he did do stuff to, reshape the roster this offseason to try to make them better. It just hasn't worked out. But I do think they need a guy to where a GM that he shouldn't be the president and the GM. You need a guy that can be above the GM, like what Holmgren was technically.
Exactly.
He was the president. So they just need a hockey guy as the president to, tell the GM what to do. I think that's what they need.
I agree. And you have a comment here from Ryan. So you can ask all the HW guys. I've been pumping Danny Briere's tires for a couple months now. You've seen interest in Montreal, and I was praying that they wouldn't hire him. Danny Briere is going to be a stud NHL GM one day. And I thought it was interesting. I mean, he's obviously around the Flyers. We've talked about it. He was on the bench with the Phantoms for a couple games. And it looks to me like they're keeping him close. I wonder if you have to wonder if there's conversations. Maybe they move Fletcher. Fletcher's the president of hockey operations right now, right? And he's the GM.
Yes, he's both.
So you don't have to necessarily fire him as GM. Just, take away one of his jobs. You still got the final say, Fletch, but we want to bring in Danny Briere. We want to get him groomed just in case things go. I mean, you don't have to tell Fletcher this, but in case things go sideways here, we want a younger guy, a fresh face. This is what they should have done before they got Fletcher. They should have got somebody new, somebody fresh. Hey, but what happened. Now you adjust and move forward. I think Danny Briere's the guy. Maybe you go out and bring Rick Tocchet in as the coach. I mean, there you go. You got two Flyer alumni right there.
I've been saying Tocchet for months.
I love Tocchet as a coach.
It's a new identity. It's a guy who's not like, he's not known for anything like how Tortorella is known for getting the most out of everybody, how Bruce Boudreau is getting the most out of his offense, getting them going. Like, Tocchet coached in Arizona for a couple years when they were pretty putrid and still are bad. Yeah. Like, it's not like he's known for anything. And if he's able to come here and kind of bring that modern day Broad Street Bullies, which is really what I think they were trying to build here before this year went even worse. Yeah, I mean, look, that's kind of where I'm at too. I think there's other guys that are in the mix. I think Claude Julien could be a guy that's in the mix. I'm trying to think of maybe other coaches. I don't want David Quinn. Jim Montgomery, I think I'm kind of out on as well.
I'm done with college coaches.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I don't want to
after
one and done.
No, we're done.
Yeah. I don't want a college coach either.
Hockey's a good fix, man. Yeah, I mean, a good fit.
After Chip Kelly, after Dave Haxtell, no, I'm done with college. I'm done with all that crap.
I would like to see the model after Carolina, man. Like, don't get me wrong, Aho's a star.
Rod the Bod.
Yeah, I mean, Svechnikov's a star. Don't get me wrong, but you look throughout that roster, and it's all guys that kind of bust their ass. And if you don't bust your ass for Rod Brindamore, you're probably not going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing. When you get guys that buy in, it all looks great.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That's what didn't happen here.
Yeah, I see this comment from Dank right here. Enjoying the random Russian comments coming in here. I have no idea what that is. I've been blocking all of them this entire.
Yeah, I was wondering who you were blocking for a minute, and I scrolled up.
Like I see all these random comments that just like I guess they're spam comments and all that crap. So I'm trying my best to block. I have no idea like what channel they're coming from. I'm not sure if mine, Chris's, the Painted Lines, or whatever. I have no idea. Yeah, I think it could be mine because I've been getting those spam comments recently on my videos, so it's probably me. So my luck there. But yeah, it's just there needs to be a change with this team. There needs to be a different mentality. Yeah, maybe Tocchet could be that guy that can, bring the fans will like it because they like Rick Tocchet. He was a fan favorite here, and he just he'll bring a different message than probably different message than what we've been hearing over the past couple of times. I know people have also been talking about front office stuff. Dean Lombardi has been in the front office for a little bit. I know. I feel like if you bring Dean Lombardi into another position, I kind of feel like that's the same message you've been hearing over the past couple of years because he's been here since Hextall. So I feel like you're kind of putting yourself in the same problem. Even though Lombardi did build cup winners with the Kings, he did also get fired from the Kings as well. So I feel like you're putting yourself in the same problem if you bring Lombardi into a higher position, if you guys know what I mean from that standpoint.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like if it's I feel like it could be the similar situation to what Jim had kind of mentioned earlier with Fletcher, like kind of moving him over. And I'm not taking anything of what you said, Jim. I'm just saying, Fletcher's been here when it was really good. Fletcher's also been here when it was really bad. And, he's still kind of the last one. And If they were to do that, I don't know how they would address it, but and then and to go back what I said too with the with Tockett, I'm thinking more of the same thing with the assistants too. If they're going to bring in assistants, I wouldn't mind Adam Foote for defense. Maybe you could even go for a different head coach and you bring in Tockett to do the power play, coach the Penguins power play when they won the cup in 16-17. And their power play was pretty damn good from my memory. So, you might be able to do something there. And if they're able to do that, and if they're able to maybe bring in that kind of new identity, I think that's probably the best thing for them.
Yeah, we got a comment right here from Wolf of Odin. I saw his previous comment saying, like, I really see your frustration, man. You're commenting in all capital letters here, but then you're saying Holmgren needs to retire from the Flyers position. He really isn't in anything right now. He's just like an advisor to the team. He really doesn't do anything with them anymore. He retired from the president position. He really doesn't do anything with the team. He's just an advisor. That's all he does. Mm-hmm. So. Right now, like what the front office is, you got Chuck Fletcher, you got the assistant general manager, you got the scouts. Chuck Fletcher is also the president as well. So it's really just Chuck Fletcher's front office, and that's basically it. There's no one above Fletcher besides Dave Scott. Like you have your advisors and Clark, Holmgren, and all that stuff. Like some of the alumni. I know there's like a whole different conversation about how the alumni in the organization are like, the alumni are not like in the way the organization has been treating them, but that's another discussion for another day. But it's just a frustrating time. And like, you can see it from the comment section, you can see from Twitter, you can just see from everything. It's a frustrating time. And who knows what this Flyers future has in store for us this rest of the season. You got the game tonight against the Islanders. You got the beer stein giveaway. Are we going to find any beer steins on the ice tonight? I have no idea.
I sure hope not.
I have no idea. Like they would be smart to not give that out until the end of the game, but they're saying the first 10,000 fans, so that scares me a little bit. The first 10,000 fans into the arena
gets the first 10,000 probably get the paper slip, and then you go and you get it after. It's usually what they do.
I don't know. Are we gonna have wristband 2.0?
I hope not. I really hope not. That would make this the worst season in Flyers history, probably.
Like I don't think there's been like some teams have that situation where a fan throws a jersey on the ice, all that. The Flyers haven't had that yet this year, and I'm surprised that hasn't happened with how everything has gone. No, we've never had that this year. I think we probably had it in a different arena, not the Wells Fargo Center, though.
Maybe.
I don't think it's happened here. But it's just. And Dank with this one question right here. It's also a frustrating time for Mike Missinelli. He's angry about Wendy's new fries. Poor guy. Keep him in your thoughts. What? What?
I don't know.
Okay, then. I think the basic summary of this entire thing, we're all frustrated. I hear Chris's dog. This dog's also probably frustrated at this point with the team. Yeah. So, any last remarks, Jim, on this Flyers tonight? Everything just it's probably a big remark at this point, because there's a lot to say with this franchise still. Like, this podcast can go on for hours and hours, but yet again, there is a Flyers game tonight too.
Well, I'll leave it to this. So tomorrow night on our show on High and Wide Radio, we're having a debate episode, rebuild or non-rebuild, and you guys are welcome to join. We're kind of doing it Royal Rumble style, where, it's going to be me, Jack, Kyle starting off, and we're going to allow guests to come in for 5-10 minutes, say their part, give them a little intro song, and get out of here, and we're going to debate, because I'm so far against a rebuild. I don't think you need to tear everything down. I think they have kind of, pieces in place where it's like, all right, things aren't going our way as far as injuries this year, COVID. But we have players. We have good players.
And they have talent.
Right. So let's see you're trading your captain. I'm assuming you're trading Claude Giroux. You're going to get something good back for him. And let's take another offseason to build once again, but we talked a lot about developing and scouts and training and whatnot. You can still fix that. You can still wipe that clean, because that has to change, obviously. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And like I said, I'm against the rebuild. That's kind of my remark. I'm for getting Danny Briere in here. I don't think Chuck Fletcher really needs to do anything else. Sometimes things just don't go your way, and yeah, commend him for the moves, commend him for trying. But unfortunately, trying doesn't win you Stanley Cups. You need to things need to happen. So, yeah, like I said, you guys are welcome to come on tomorrow night. Or if you're not available, even if it's a pre-recorded clip to play during the show, I would love to get your guys' thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, I know that's going to be a major discussion for this
team
for a long time. Yeah, what time?
So we're looking at like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So I mean, we could talk after the show and we'll get the details figured out. But
give us
it'd be fun. Make sure you send me an intro song too, so I can play your intro music before you come on in.
Okay.
It's going to be a rumble tomorrow night. I'm telling you.
Me
and Jack I'm on one side. Jack and Kyle are on the opposite side.
Oh boy.
And it's going to get fun. I'm excited.
It sounds pretty spicy there. It definitely does, as I am getting destroyed by Chris's dad. Don't say anything about the dog and Dank Seltzer. I'm just saying the dog was frustrated at the Flyers. I'm not making any harsh comments towards the dog. Don't worry about anything there, Ed. But yeah. But I see both sides, honestly. I've had my discussions with somebody saying like I want this team to fix something, but I also don't want to go through another 3 to 5 years of bad hockey. Yeah. Just because we've been through it so many times. I'm tired of it.
You might have to, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. You might have to.
That's the thing. I mean, it might be the kick in the ass, but we might have to actually go through a couple years where they're at least contending, but they're not quite there yet. And then, it might be that year where we don't think it, but they might actually end up going and winning the whole thing. Realistically, I don't think any team.
I stand firmly on this statement. The Flyers will rebuild and somehow luck their way into a goddamn Stanley Cup during a rebuild year. That would be Flyers in wholeheartedly, in my honest opinion.
Yeah,
they try to go for the Cup one year, they suck. They don't try to go for the Cup, they win the Cup. I feel like that's the way it goes. And this comment right here by Philly Ghost, I think summarizes the entire thing. I'm just so tired of my Flyers being a mental head case. Is that too much to ask for? We feel you there, buddy. We feel you there, man. We do. So we want to thank Jim for joining the Florida podcast. Definitely enjoy having you on as always. Definitely looking to continue more episodes down in the future with you joining us. And also as more spam comments join our comment section, gladly it's the end of this. But yeah, looking for more podcasts in the future. Also, definitely check out High and Wide Radio, especially for tomorrow. There are Royal Rumble on a rebuild or not to rebuild. That definitely should be
having a wrestling match.
It definitely should.
Feelings mutual, guys. Really, thank you for having me on. It's always a lot of fun, and I hope you can both join tomorrow night. It's been a long time. I've been Amedeo, we talked about it the other night, but trying to figure something out that works for all of us. So hopefully tomorrow night's the night.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely we'll talk after this podcast is over. But yeah, thank you for joining us. And sorry we didn't get the most of your comments in the comment section, boys. We just had a lot of good discussion in this podcast. But definitely check out the Painted Lines wherever they're at, social media, YouTube, Twitter, wherever they're at. Same thing for mine and Chris's separate YouTube channels, TTP Sports for me, FLYERSFANMANIA 93 for Chris. Also, don't forget to check out all those separate links down in the description below. Same thing, use the code FLYERSFANMANIA, and also TTP Sports for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. I got it right, Chris. Don't worry. I corrected it.
Okay. It's all
right. Yeah, definitely. My YouTube channel, Chris's YouTube channel, the Flyer Up Pod, Twitter, everything there. Definitely do not forget to check those out. Same thing. Go check out Flyers HW. They do a lot of great stuff there. Their podcasts as well. So, yeah, thank you for joining this episode of the Flyer Up Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Amedeo Grassia. His Chris Maher. Our guest was Jim from Flyers HW. And we will see you next time. Hopefully, the Flyers don't lose tonight, but they probably will.